Okay. So I wanted to tonight discuss something that is related to Lag BaOmer, and the title of the class is the Great Debates of Lag BaOmer. Not that Lag BaOmer really has that many debates. What Lag BaOmer is the anniversary of two things. One is the anniversary of the end of the plague that was affecting you guys. Welcome to join. That was affecting my parents just got here. The plague that was affecting the students of Rabbi Akiva, that we know the Gemara tells us that Rabbi Akiva students, 24,000 of them died between Pesach and Shavuos. Kulam b'Perek Echad, and there are different Masoras, there are different traditions, most notably of the Tashbates, that writes that it was the first 33 days of the period between Pesach and Shavuos that the students of Rabbi Akiva died, and it's during this 33 days that we take on customs of mourning, which is why we haven't shaved, gotten haircuts, listened to music, attended weddings, and the like during this period, is because we are in a state of mourning. However, Lag BaOmer is the anniversary of when Rabbi Akiva students stopped dying, which is why last year we gave a class on Erev Lag BaOmer all about Rabbi Akiva. And I think the week before that, we gave a class about one of his greatest students, whose yortzeit is Lag BaOmer, and that is Rabbi Shimon Bar Yochai. On the day of Rabbi Shimon Bar Yochai's death, he writes in it's recorded in the Zohar. Thank you. It's recorded in the Zohar, which is unclear whether or not it was actually written by Rabbi Shimon Bar Yochai himself, or it was his teachings that were recorded by his students. But upon the death of Rabbi Shimon Bar Yochai, which happened on Lag BaOmer, he gave over the sod of the Torah. He gave over the foundation of the Torah. Now, what does that mean, the foundation of the Torah? Doesn't the Torah speak for itself, have its own right? It is both it is the foundation, it is the structure, it is everything. The Torah was, as it is said in the Zohar, "Istakel be'oraisa ubara alma," that Torah was part of the fabric of the world. So what we mean when we say the sod, which too often is unfortunately mistranslated as Jewish mysticism. I don't even actually quite understand what Jewish mysticism really means. What it is when God created the world, he looked into what is the principles of the Torah in a much more metaphysical sense. And through that metaphysical spirit of the Torah, created the world, created its inhabitants, and created mankind. That is brought down in a practical way to us through our observance of mitzvot. But that's really what Kabbalah is. Those teachings were all taught by Rabbi Shimon Bar Yochai on the day of his death. These are things that Rabbi Shimon Bar Yochai learned when he was in the Pardes, which is a whole discussion of itself. The Gemara in Chagiga Daf Yud Daled, it talks about the 4 individuals that went into the Pardes and what happened to them there. But when Rabbi Shimon Bar Yochai was in the Pardes, he amassed all of this knowledge of the Torah in this, metaphysical state. Okay, this all happened on Lag BaOmer. What I want to discuss tonight is the minhag of upshirin, that many families have the custom that on Lag BaOmer, along with the whole large gathering of people that go up to Meron, which on Lag BaOmer, Dad, how many people go up to Meron on Lag BaOmer? 50,000? 50,000, 100,000. I think it's closer to 100,000.
Every bus in Israel is used.
The entire bus system in Israel, my father is saying, is used only for people to go up to Meron on Lag BaOmer. The country basically shuts down just for people to go up to Meron to visit the gravesite of Rabbi Shimon Bar Yochai. There, along with all of the festivities and all of the bonfires, which, by the way, the bonfires, what does it represent? The bonfires are represent Kabbalah. It represents Kabbalah. This is what's recorded by the second Sakhachover Rebbe. The second Sakhachover Rebbe was the Shem Shmuel, Rabbi Shmuel Bornstein, and he writes in his classic Hasidic work called the Bnei Yissaschar, he writes that the reason we have these big bonfires on Lag BaOmer is because it represents Kabbalah. How does it represent Kabbalah? It represents Kabbalah because Torah is compared to already in the Gemara as a fire, as Eish. The Gemara in Ksuba speaks about this in the way that we want to be able to experience the Shechina of Hashem, which is referred to in the Torah as Eish, it's an Eish, it's a fire that consumes. And the way that we connect to that fire without being burnt up by it is through Torah. Torah is compared to fire. Rabbi Shimon Bar Yochai gave over Torah through the Zohar, through Kabbalah, but more than that, we know that fire needs to be handled properly. It's not something that you could just go and give to your kid. It's something that needs to be handled in a mature and adult way, in a safe way. And the underpinnings of the Torah, the Kabbalah, also needs to be something that is handled properly. If used correctly, can be absolutely amazing, but it needs to be handled correctly. Anyway, there's a lot more to be said about the bonfires and Kabbalah, but along with all the bonfires and the festivities and the singing and dancing and celebrating Rabbi Shimon Bar Yochai's life and Rabbi Akiva and all of that, you'll see in Meron, you see these 3-year-old boys or almost 3-year-old boys or just after 3-year-old boys, depending on what the customs are, which we'll discuss soon, with their long hair, where it's the only place in the world where the old ladies are not coming over to these beautiful young boys and saying, "Oh my gosh, she looks so beautiful," because everyone knows that a little child with long hair there on Meron is there for his upsherin. Even, we have this custom in our family. I myself had an upsherin when I was 3 years old. It's what we're growing out our son Asher's hair. Now, what is the story with the upsherin? Why does it happen most celebrated on Lag BaOmer, specifically at Meron? So before we get to Meron, I want to first point out the earliest place that we have this custom of upsherin, because you'll hear from many people, oh, upsherin is a big, it's a big fable. It's not anything that has any source in halacha or even in Kabbalah. It's a made up minhag. It doesn't have any reality to it. It's just silliness. It's nourishkeit. That is absolutely not true. The Rabbi, Rabbeinu David ben Zimra, who died in 1573. Marty, can you fact check that for me? 1573, the Rabbi, I believe, died in that same year. Along with the Rabbi, also Rahman al-Litzlan, not just that year, in around the 4 or 5 years period, right then, was the demise of the Ramah, Rav Moshe Isserlis, in 1572. Rabbi Yosef Karo, who died in 1575, the Radbaz, who died in 1573, and also the Yam Shel Shlomo, Rab Shlomo Luria, who died, I think, in also 1572 or 1573. But Marty will fact check. I got thumbs up. Okay, that there was a fifth one. Marty, you can unmute yourself. Who was the fifth one? I thought there was a fifth one. Who was the fifth one? Okay, Marty will put it in the chat. So the Rabbaz, we're talking now 16th century, okay? So this is going pretty far back. He writes the following. He says, Shalta mimeni, that someone, this is a responsa. Someone sent me the following question. Odiacha da'ati, they want to know my psak, they want to know my thought. The mishen nadar legalech es beno, b'makom Shmuel Hanavi. Someone made a neder, made a vow. Baruch atah Adonai makom shekom yivro. Someone made a vow that they were going to give an upshare into their son. They were going to, the Arizal also. Oh, the Arizal we're going to speak about tonight. Okay, the Arizal also died that same year. I didn't realize that. That someone sent me the following question. That they made a vow that they wanted to give an upshare into their son. They wanted to cut their son's hair. By the way, upshirin in Yiddish, shear is to shave. Okay, so they want to give an upshare into their son. B'makom Shmuel Hanavi, at the burial place of Shmuel Hanavi, which is in Jerusalem. Okay, so there seems to be these parallel minhagim that some people went up to Shmuel Hanavi's kever, and other people went to go do the upsharing at in Meron at Reb Shimon Bar Yochai's kever. But here at least we have the original source for upsharing. Uba. So what happened? Well, what's the question here? Okay, he clearly is saying that there is this custom, but what was the issue that this person is sending him a question about? Uba. Umatza shikvar nilkach biyad ha'akum. Unfortunately, Rahman al-Litzlan, this child was kidnapped. Horrible scenario. That this child was kidnapped by non-Jews be'oniot on boats. Ve'ein Yisrael yochol li'echanei sham. We can't get him out of his captivity. Ma takana yesh lo. So now, the question here is obviously a very sad question, or the facts here are very sad facts. Okay, this child was kidnapped. So while this is very, very sad, heart-wrenching, tear-jerking, what is the question that is being asked of this posek? Again, this is not their personal family rav that is looking to get guidance here from. This is the Sephardic posek hador. So this individual is sending a question that's a halachic question. They want to know a halachic psak. What do I do in this scenario? Now, what really are they asking? So says the Radbaz, tshuva. Here is the answer, meaning he is addressing the halachic issue at play here, which we still don't know what it is. Kfar nahagu b'chol ha-galilos, that in all of the surrounding neighborhoods in different places, lachshov ze neder gomer, that this concept of a upshurin is a full-fledged neder. Okay, it is a vow that a person makes. V'hatam. Now, what is the reason for this neder? Why do we grow those who have the custom their child's hair out until they're 3 years old before cutting it? Lefi shahayu regilin lehevi nedarim v'nedavos. Because the custom was people would make these vows. V'notne mishkal hase'ar litzar hamakom, that they would make a vow to weigh their child's hair, and whatever their child's hair weighed in whatever the local currency was, let's say it was gold or silver, whatever it was, that whatever the hair weighed in that much value in gold, they would give tzedakah. They would give a chalak la'aniyim, l'tzarchei tzibur, they would give it to the communal fund, they'd give it to the poor of the community. We see from here that it's a full-fledged vow. So what's the question that was being asked of the Radbaz? The question was, aside for all of the other emotional factors of we want our child back, we're worried about our child, we don't know whether or not he's ever going to come back, maybe he won't come back, even if he doesn't come back, we took upon ourselves a vow to give tzedakah based on the weight of his hair. We don't have a way to measure how much tzedakah to give because we don't have our child's hair, Rahman al-Islam. This is the question that was asked by the Radbaz. We're not going to get into his answer because his answer is very technical in the laws of Nidarim. But what we see from here is very telling too, where this custom comes from of upsherin. The custom of upsherin comes directly from trying to educate our children in the custom of giving tzedakah. The very first thing we want our child to understand growing up is that when they grow up, that they are not supposed to live a life of self-servitude. They are supposed to live a life that is giving to the greater good of the Jewish people, the greater good beyond them. And we spoke about this in the Drush a few weeks ago, that this was something that Reb Chaim Volozhiner would teach his children, that is the whole purpose of man, that a person was created in order to lahayol la'achrini, in order to provide for others. This is the first thing we want to be able to teach our children when they turn of impressionable age. Now, when we say impressionable age, there's a classic folk story. I think they tell it about different Rebbes, but I think they tell it about the Ger Rebbe. At least that's the way that Brooke and I heard the version of the story from our Masada Kedushin, Rav Meir Goldwich, that when a couple came, they were about to have a child, they came to the Rebbe, and they said to the Rebbe, when does chinuch begin? When do we start being mechanech, educating our child? So they're thinking, 5 years old, 6 years old, when the child's able to start reading, writing, what's the... And the Ger Rebbe responds, and he says, 9 months ago. All right, 9 months ago is when you were supposed to start doing chinuch on your child, right? That in terms of impressions, yes, there certainly is a subconscious impression that is created on children. I mean, there are direct studies about this, attachment theory and things of that nature, that prove the fact that even from the child, from the moment the child's born, or even in utero, that there are certain impressions that the child can get. But that's more subconscious. We're talking about in the acute awareness building and knowledge for the child. That begins, it seems like, at the age of 3 years old. That's based on the Medrash Tanchuma. The Medrash Tanchuma writes that when Avram Avinu turned the age of 3 years old, by the way, this is also a Gemara in Masechtas Nedarim on Daf Lamed Beis, that when Avram Avinu turned 3 years old, that was when he discovered God. We see at 3 years old is when you can start understanding these kind of broad values in life. I just want to point out that where does the source for doing the upsherin come into play, specifically with regard to Lag BaOmer? This is cited by the Arizal. The Arizal, who passed away the same year or the same year as the Radbaz, as Marty pointed out. He says that that specifically for children, and when they turn 3 years old or in their third year, they should go up to Meron in order to have that experience. Again, it's just a question of, I mean, the way that the Nitei Gavriel, which is what's being shared on the screen here, Gavriel Zinner, who is a world-class posek in Brooklyn, he says that he feels that this was really a geographic issue. The Radbaz was in Yerushalayim, which is why he went to Shmuel Hanavi's kever, and the Arizal was in Tzfat, which is probably why he instructed people to go to Reb Shimon Bar Yochai's kever, perhaps because those were the kfarim of the greatest tzaddikim in that geographic location. That's what Rav Gavriel Zinner points out. But he points out from the Arizal that in the third year, you take your child to Meron. Now, it is interesting. I don't know who this is that he quotes, but he says, B'sefer Seder Tefillah. I don't know who that is. He kasav shezeh mevur, that this minhag is brought down by the Arsha. Arizal Gilech Beno B'Lag BaOmer did an upsherin for his son on Lag BaOmer, but he said that that the facts were, though, not that the Arizal took his child in the third year, but rather Chaya b'melos lo gimel shanim. That was the Arizal's son's third birthday. His third birthday was Lag BaOmer, so he thought it was appropriate to do the upsherin for his son at Meron, at the kever of Reb Shimon Bar Yochai, being that it was Lag BaOmer. So it's a very, very rational perspective for a very irrational character in our history. But nevertheless, I thought it was for intellectual honesty, I thought it was important to share. Okay, I'm sorry again. I have to stop here. Even though this is such a fun topic, maybe we'll continue it next week. Although next week we're on. Next week we should, right? Right, Brooke? Next week there should be, right? Yeah. So maybe we'll continue this next week because it's a fun topic. But unfortunately, I'm sorry, I have to stop here. But Yashkoach again to the Lincolns. Thank you for providing a host, for hosting, and I hope that one day we'll not only be able to have you host a Zoom class, but maybe even a class in your actual home. That would be a great opportunity. Okay, very good. All right, thank you, everybody. Have a wonderful and joyous Lag BaOmer, God willing, tomorrow night. Hopefully anyone that can come to the bonfire, it'd be a nice experience. Good night, everybody.
Good night.
Thank you.
Good night.
Thank you. Thanks, Rabbi.
Bye, guys. Bye, Craig. Bye, everybody.